Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this webinar with the catchy title of Well Planning of Exploration and Production Wells, where we look at data and workflows. We've got some amazing people joining us today, like we did yet last time. In the last webinar, we had more than 300 views. I don't quite remember the number, but it was quite a substantial amount of brilliant people who has watched the presentation, has watched our video. Today, more than 200 people have signed up, so we're really excited to have you here and to see you and to get to talk to you. Why we are doing this is because we want to shift our industry, help inspire growth in our industry, moving away from spreadsheets and PowerPoints and enabling more uptake of advanced technology and faster development of our industry. And since you are here, that is what you want as well, because you are interested in this topic. And we are super happy that you are here. So please click like and click subscribe, since we're on YouTube now. And please comment below what you want to know. Why are you here? What are your thoughts about the industry and where we're going on well planning and on data management? So, without much further introduction, we are going to introduce our speakers. I'd just like to leave a little plug that the reason why we are doing this is, of course, to sell SaaS software. We are a SaaS company working on data management and working on well planning workflows. So if you like this, please reach out to us so we can give you a demo or talk you through the value points of how we can help you. Let's get started with what we all want to hear, which is what experts in well planning are thinking. And with us today, we have two from Shell internationally. We have Ian and we have Kareem, and we'll dive right into the meeting with them now. But before I do that, please leave questions and comments as we're going. We will read the questions and we will bring them up during the discussions and at the end of the discussion. All right. Hello, Kareem and Ian, how are you?
Good. Doing well.
Very glad to have you here. I think we just kick off. So we have two interesting talks today. The first is Ian, who will talk about data management, and then Kareem will share his thoughts on the well planning processes. Am I right?
No, you're right, Magnus.
Then good. Please go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, so I'll get started. No, thanks, Magnus, for inviting me to the webinar. So just as a quick introduction to myself, so my name's Ian Sipin. I'm a well engineer for Shell, working here in Aberdeen, primarily looking at the high pressure, high temperature well scopes as part of the design team. And previously, about 3 years ago, I was in a short-term assignment in Houston, working in the digital team, looking at digital workflows, helping to shape Shell Well's forward strategy on digitalization and improved workflows. So I kind of know what I'm talking about from both digitalization side, but also being deep in the well design aspects of things at the moment. Really, the last 2 years we've been working with prowellplan in Shell UK and Shell globally, and we've been working on integrating the prowellplan software for Shell UK. We've seen a lot of benefits for it. We've seen a lot of energy. We've also seen some learnings, and I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about my personal insights on the software, personal insights on data management, data insights in well planning, and also maybe talk a little bit about for your future clients and for anyone else in the industry, what my thoughts are on well data quality and how do we work on improving that. So the first thing I want to say is, really in the sphere of digitalization, in data in general, there's really two major value propositions in my view. The first value proposition is really around better data insights. So if you had all the data at your fingertips for every well, you know every loss event that's ever happened, you know the trajectories of every well that's ever been drilled, and you know anything that's qualitative that you can put into something that you can quantitatively assess, there are significant advantages to improving your decision making. So that's one, improving your decision making using data insights and supplementing data insights alongside hardcore engineering efforts such as casing design, trajectory planning, and these things. And the second value proposition is really around faster workflow. If I have to design a well and it takes me a year to design a well, versus if it takes me 3 months to design a well, there's a clear value proposition, not only in my very limited salary and my time, but also it frees up my mental space to think about the things that really move and shake a well design. If I'm spending all day doing the mundane tasks of plugging in numbers in well design software, pulling up trajectories, data mining PDFs for offset data, then I can spend that time solving the real issues. What trajectory should I plan for? What kind of mud weight should I optimize to? Should I be using NPD or not? These are the kind of decisions I can be making with the time. Now, although it's clear that both hold value, and everyone can see that, clearly better decision making will yield sufficient results. You know, I'm only earn a certain amount of money. So if you save a month of my time, that's a month for Shell that they've saved for this well design. But if I make good decisions on my trajectory plan, if I make good decisions on my mud weights, my overall well designs, if I can slim down my well based on offsets to show that we had taken very conservative well designs in other wells and nothing has really panned out, no major event has happened, and that's clearly millions that you can save in that region. And I referenced some of the work that I've been using in ProWellPlan. I was involved in a bit of a peer review in Nigeria, and one of the things that I used ProWellPlan to was to confirm that the trajectories that they were planning in terms of the high inclinations were certainly a little bit higher than offsets. And if you take a look at that and you see the NPT related to those high inclinations, you can show that there's a clear correlation between them. So qualitatively, it makes sense. Quantitatively, it makes sense. And then we get onto the real sort of dirty work, looking at borehole stability, mud weights, rig capability, these kind of things. But it helps to inform that decision, and it makes a big change in your overall well cost to make those decisions and to have that data in front of you to justify those decisions. Now, all I will say is of those two value propositions, improved decision making using data and faster workflow, I believe ProWellPlan plays in both of those. It helps me find the data in that I need in the software, makes it palatable in terms of its presentation and the way that I can crunch the numbers through that. But it also frees up my engineering time to focus on those said decisions that you can see through the software. So that's really what I want to say. ProWellPlan's helped me do that, but really, we should be focusing on both. I think we should be focusing more on data insights and better decision making, because that's where you make the real money. Now, we've spent 2 years embedding ProWellPlan in the system, and it's been, its capability and its utilization and its user friendliness has been great. I think where we have learned quite a lot about is quality of well data. The UK is a very mature well basin, and you would think that something that was so mature would have a wealth of data, but unfortunately it hasn't. We're talking about wells drilled in the 30s and the 40s that have no such data, that were written in reports on paper and facts to the office. And really only recently have we been structuring our data in something that can be read and analyzed. And I think it has been a bit of a difficult journey. The UK, we've got our own internal database of wells in Shell, and we're using that. But outside of Shell, it's very difficult to find good quality data that's vetted. Unfortunately, when you compare us to Norway or the Gulf of Mexico, where there is requirement for data input in a structured format, there's clearly a lot of value that you can get, and you really get a lot more out of ProWellPlan. But in the UK, we really only have Rushmore data, which is itself, it's good data for benchmarking. It's good for what it is, but its depth of insights is relatively lacking. And so we're trying to make the best of what we've got for non-shell wells. It means that a lot of our insights will be shell driven, and that's a shame because I think everyone can understand that every operator in the North Sea and every operator globally does things differently. And I think that's the one thing we've struggled with. The data is just not there to help us make detailed decisions based on non-shell wells. And I think moving forward is really to understand how can we, as a UK industry, or how can we, as wherever industry you're from in the webcast, how can we help structure our data acquisition and requirements either privately or through the regulator to help us moving forward. At the end of the day, if we don't start now on capturing good data and improving our data quality and making sure that we capture the right depth, then we'll be at a loss moving forward when we are truly, hopefully, data driven in our approach to well design. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Definitely good feedback, to ProWellPlan. I certainly encourage anyone across the patch to look into it. But that's certainly my take on the value proposition for data.
Thank you so much for your sharing and kind words. We bribed you, of course, to say these things. You didn't want to do that, but still, thank you.
Thanks, Magnus.
No, what's your what's data management workflow to you? How is data quality improved?
So I don't have a lot of experience in the sort of our internal data management processes. I think what's important to know, it's really making sure that you have a workflow that works. That not only are you capturing data, whether that's at the well site or through your end well reports or anything in your design, but that data is correct. Unfortunately, you can take a look and you can see lots of green boxes. Oh yeah, there's a casing depth there. There's a well. There's mud weights that's involved. There's pore pressure fracture and all of that. You can see all those green boxes, but is that really what is coming out of is that the actual number? Is that true? And I think that's where we stumble. Making sure that we have enough data checks, and making sure that it's logical and all ties together with whatever logical checks you want to put in. I think that's key. But having a good data QA/QC input and workflow is important. But really, I think the other aspect of it is just emphasizing the importance, because at the end of the day, data is entered by coalface engineers on the rig or in the office, and for everyone to understand that. For me, as an engineer, to make data-driven decisions, it is also on me to make sure that I put in good quality data, that I'm serious about what I put in, because at the end of the day, it's manually entered at the moment, and maybe there's something there around automated data entry, but we'll see where that's another level, I believe.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A lot of the data we are using comes from operations, directly from operations, very often reported as we go. But I think that the engineers are doing so much data creation in the well planning phase when they're looking at different data sets and combining them. They're looking, okay, we had this mud issue in this well and in this well. And then comparing those. It's very hard to do while operations are ongoing. But engineers are typically doing that when they're planning a new well. They combine data from 3-4 different wells and compare settings and parameters and events to create more data. I think that's what are your thoughts on that? All the data that is created during well planning.
No, for sure. I think there is quite a lot of there's quite a lot of insights that we generate on an almost hourly basis during our calculations, and I think unfortunately, it takes time to log that data in a correct way in the well planning process. So if you think about it, if I'm on an Excel spreadsheet building a well design and looking at offsets, that's stored in my laptop and it's stored in my brain. Unless I stand up from my chair and have a discussion with someone in the office about it, that data will stay in my laptop and stay in my brain. So making sure we build a platform for people to do their analysis in a way that is open, making sure that we're sensible when people are doing that as well, because inviting people to work in an open environment is something else. It's something that people are not used to. Being open to critique from anywhere is a difficult task, but I think building a platform for people to do their work, make sure that we capture all those insights is great. And I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, cool. Well, Camilo, you have any comments or questions, or any questions from the webinar participants?
Well, not any specific questions so far, but I would like to have a small intervention here. Let me just share the screen for a moment. Okay, so here, I just want to quickly show you how we visualize the data flow while planning a new wellbore. So here we have a well design with all the data sets that we need to structure properly the new project, right? So we have, for example, geology pressures, sections, and so on. As we can see here, we have a lot of data already there. And the idea is that using the API, we can establish a communication with any partner, either a company or external software. So that means that we can actually send and receive data. The magic starts when you make like any change on the design, and without any additional action, it's automatically updated on all the other software and databases you need. So if this is in general the workflow we have in the platform, and if you have any question, just share it in the chat. And yeah, now we can continue with Magnus.
Thank you. That was a little plug from ProWellPlan by surprise there in between the speakers. So thank you, Juan Camilo. Kareem, you're next up. You're an expert in well planning in Shell. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, Magnus, can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I'm Kareem El-Sadi. I'm a well engineer here in Shell, and I've been a drilling engineer for the past 10 years in a variety of different basins and settings, and I figured I'd come here and offer my perspective and my kind of experience from a vantage point of a drilling engineer who's been involved in well design across multiple different assets and parts of the world. And really my goal is to just maybe get into the nitty-gritty of the actual real-world complexities and intricacies of taking a well from an idea on paper to a productive asset, and what a well engineer has to actually go through to make that happen, and how we can do that better and kind of enhance our capability and reduce our complexity in the digital age, and how we could pull in products like ProWellPlan and their capabilities to kind of enhance our workflow. And the first thing I'll say is planning a well is a highly nonlinear exercise. It can be as complex as you want it to be, and often it's more complex than we'd like. And the reality of it is there's multiple stakeholders with many different value drivers. So you've got your engineering team, you've got the operations team who has to take a plan and execute. You have regulatory vested interest in the safety and the productivity of the asset. You've got management internally who are going to be looking for certain KPIs. You've got business partners, you've got suppliers, you've got CP. So you can see there's a wide variety of stakeholders, and everybody's looking for something related to the well. So we're all kind of united by the same ultimate objective and core goal of having a productive well. But everybody kind of looks at it from a bit of a different lens. And when you think about it that way, I think kind of a real world analogy is it's sort of akin to planning a wedding. You've got a lot of different subplots, a lot of different agendas. You're cost conscious. You know, you got to think about who's going to be the band or the DJ. Where's the food coming from? How do I keep my in-laws happy? You know, the end goal is you want everybody to be happy and walk out with good memories. But the reality of it is it can become a stressful affair It can become overly complex and cumbersome. And if we can find ways to get rid of that complexity, then we're serving everybody well. At the end of the day, it's a win-win. And so, again, just going back to the reality of well planning, we talked about a wide variety of stakeholders. There's also a wide variety of data, and a lot of this is going to be piggybacking on what Ian was just talking about. The data inputs and the elements that we have to output from those inputs there's no shortage of them. So you got pore pressure, you've got tops, you've got geohazards, shallow hazards, wellbore stability, relief well, worst case discharge, the production information for a well, where you want to put the casing seats and all the designs that go behind each casing string, permits, drilling programs. There's so much that needs to kind of go into the black box and come out of the black box to make this thing happen. And it can become difficult to manage because you've also got multiple different stakeholders who are feeding information into this black box and at various points taking information back out. And in a way, like I mentioned earlier, it's nonlinear. There's a bit of a Dunning-Kruger effect where the more information you have, at some points it feels like the less you know. You get more information coming in and you have to reset and take 2 to 3 steps backwards in order to move forward again. And that takes time, and it increases the cycle time of well planning. And the more complex and high pressure, high temperature, high stakeholder count, high visibility the well is, the more you have that Dunning-Kruger effect. And it actually takes a toll on staff, and it's a big pull on resources to get from A to Z. So in theory, the way we'd like to think about it is one thing builds off the next. You've got pore pressure and tops, then you pick your casing seats. But the reality is it never really works like that. A lot of it is cyclical and iterative, and you have to go back. And a lot of that's just related to the nature of how we've historically planned wells and how we've managed the kind of interconnectivity of different disciplines. So the question is, how does this actually manifest in the day-to-day for a drilling engineer? What is my reality every day, and what's the reality of every other drilling engineer? The reality is everything's in files and folders and subfolders, and a lot of times you don't have access to the right files and you have to wait on that. A lot of times things are buried in somebody's inbox. And so data management and managing those workflows is just made infinitely more complex because of how we've historically done things. And most of the work is outputted in Excel, and people create their own formulas, and to go in and tweak something, sometimes you're using the Excel sheet that somebody else has used and you don't know what's in there. And another issue is a lot of times you've got overlapping content. So you may have the same information about a well stored in multiple different files. Each person, somewhat owns a different file, and if you make an update in one place, you've got to go back and make an update in another place. And so obviously that introduces version control issues, risks of using wrong and outdated information. So the pitfalls are many. The goal is big, the pitfalls are many, and it's a constant challenge just managing this workflow. And I think this is common across any operator, in particular operators who are involved in planning these big deep water wells, where there's a lot of eyes on it. There's a lot of onus of responsibility to demonstrate a robust casing design that can actually turn into a productive asset. And by increasing the complexity of just doing the day-to-day, it increases the risk of well planning, in my opinion. And then aside from that, once you do all the work, you've got multiple reviews. Assurance, there's no shortage of it. You have to review with many different stakeholders and gain the assurance and make sure everybody's on the same page and that the alignment is there. And so again, bringing it back to the day-to-day and the nitty-gritty, a lot of what that means is you go into an Excel spreadsheet, you use the snipping tool, and you cut and you put it in a PowerPoint somewhere, and now you've got version 8 of a PowerPoint because things keep getting changed. Or you can imagine what I'm trying to say. So well maturation, the reality of it is it's very integrated, very multidisciplinary. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be robust, and we work hard to keep it comprehensive and robust. But the truth is, it's time intensive. It's very resource intensive. And if you ask the question, are we efficient in how we use our resources, especially when you look at it from the lens of we're in a digital age and things aren't done in most industries the way they were done 20 years ago, the reality is we're not quite there yet. And I think that's where tools like prowellplan come into play. So everything I mentioned here in terms of data management, files and folders, version control, using old data, having to manipulate and tweak multiple different spreadsheets, having to gain alignment, getting all the stakeholders aware of what's going on and on the same page as to what the reality of the well construction is, and going through the reviews and assurance process. A lot of that can actually, I know the Pro Well Plan team is actively working this too. A lot of that can be done in a nice integrated platform like the Planner module in Pro Well Plan. The platform is there and is constantly being worked on and improved. And our experience has been the vision of what we can accomplish with the Pro Well Planner module is very appealing, because in theory, well, what we hope is in practice, it'll cut down cycle times, it'll reduce complexity, it'll reduce mismanagement of data. It'll store everything in one place in an integrated fashion, so that if you make a change to pore pressure in one calculation, you don't have to go and make 6 to 7 other updates to other things that are kind of related but aren't linked up. So yeah, I think the reality of well planning is currently very intensive and currently cumbersome, but I think where we can get to with the Pro Well Plan planner is very appealing. I think it's a time saver, it's a money saver, it's a complexity reducer, it's a risk alleviator, and so yeah, I'm very pleased to see the work that's being done in the planner module in Pro Well Plan, building off of all the good work that was done using the offset planning capabilities. And yeah, I'm happy to keep working with the team. I think it's been a great experience. I think everybody shares the vision and the understanding of what the challenges are and where we can get to. One thing I haven't mentioned is, we talked about the example of planning a wedding. In the exploration world, a lot of the times you're planning a wedding and you don't know when the wedding date is. And so that's part of the difficulty, is sometimes things are sprung up on you and you have to react and go through the full comprehensive well planning process. And the quicker we can do that, the more efficiently, the more accurately we can do that, the better off everybody is at the end of the day. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Wow. Thanks for sharing all that information. Juan, Camilo, you have been making many of these features. What are your thoughts hearing this, hearing what the expert Kareem is saying? What are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's important always a close collaboration with all the teams, actually, not only the drilling but also exploration and all the teams that can be actually involved in the whole process, because it's important the data sharing, not only within the same team, but also for all the organization, all the different teams in the organization, right? And in some level, also how you can communicate this with external stakeholders as well. So I think this is a whole process where we can actually adopt this approach and make the workflow even better.
Very good. Did we receive any questions that we want to bring up to these experts? Not sure how this live is playing out. It's a bit challenging. But let me ask an open question. What is it like to be a stakeholder of drilling a well? Who are the key stakeholders, and how do they perceive the workflows and the data management in well planning?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my vantage point as a drilling engineer, and a lot of times it feels like the onus is on us to please all the other stakeholders and share back to them through the lens that they need to look at. But like I said, there's no shortage. There's a lot of people involved in maturing a well. We've got folks from the subsurface team, so geology, petrophysics, geohazards, the production team, the asset owners, the wells management, and then you've got the regulator, who, especially in the deep water world, is involved in assurance and sign off, and they need certain deliverables as well. So yeah, I mean, to make all this happen, obviously working with the operations teams, you've got suppliers, you've got contracts, procurement, and a lot of that it all kind of ties in. It goes back to the same hub of the core objective is to mature the well from A to Z, but everybody has their own personal interests. Some people are more interested in the financials. Some people are more interested in the details of the pore pressure. Some people are more interested in the details of the tops and the uncertainty. But at the end of the day, it all culminates towards the same end goal. And I think the reality for every discipline, I mean, I'm speaking for a drilling engineer, but I think the reality for everybody is that our data management workflow can be significantly improved. Our cycle time can be significantly cut down. I think our rework and resetting and kind of stepping back on our, going back to that Dunning-Kruger effect, making advancement, then taking 3 or 4 steps back to rework based on new information that came in. I think a lot of that can be improved, and I think it's the reality for most disciplines. And so, I mean, you know, for me, it's attractive as an engineer because I know it'll help, you know, my day-to-day, but I think the reality is if it helps my day-to-day, it helps everybody else's day-to-day because we're all kind of connected.
And similar for me, you know, from one of the things I wanted to point out as well is, you know, we are, as a drilling engineer and a well engineer and a custodian of a well at the sort of, you know, there are multiple levels of technical assurance above us, not only in the wells, but also from a commercial perspective. Is the well attractive to drill commercially, and is the well satisfying the subsurface objective, i.e. are the subsurface assurers all satisfied with the work that we're doing? And I think similar to what Kareem said, you know, our data management and cycle time can be improved, but I think it's also important to note that these assurers will not be satisfied by purely data-driven insights, I think, and nor will they be purely satisfied by just doing engineering and say, right, this is, I've done the analysis, and based on the analysis, it tells me that I can use 5 7/8 drill string, or 5.5 inch drill string, or 5 inch drill string. They want both, right? You want the hardcore engineering, the calculations. They also want to show, okay, this is what I've come up with. The others and other people behind me on Shell and other operators are doing it that way. You need to match it side by side. And I think that dichotomy, that relationship between engineering and data needs to, I think there's a gap. I think there's a lot that we can do to make sure that both items are tackled simultaneously at multiple levels, because there's multiple levels of data insights. Data insights that tell you, okay, all the wells that are in the North Sea that we're drilling are all 4-string designs. So we should go 4-string design, right? That's the highest level echelon of data. And then there's the other data, multiple layers of data, and then data to the point of, right, my input for this is 5,000 psi, but all the other inputs are between 4,000 and 6,000 psi, and therefore I've chosen 5,000 psi for the input of this one calculation. And I think it's important that whatever data platform we're using, we're able to strip back and understand every layer of that data sandwich and get insights from all aspects. And I think that's what my view as a, you know, I'm not a well expert, by the way, just to put it out there, but as a well engineer and a well designer, my key goal is to please the assurers who are there, who are signing off on my programs, who are signing off on my designs, and I need to have a workflow that works for me, that I can convince them that I've done the right work.
Very valuable opinions. Yeah, my mind. Any other questions, Juan Camilo?
Yeah, actually, I have one question. This is for both of you guys. How do you see the collaboration between the planning system and the rig operating system? How do you think this communication should work between them, both the planning phase and also the rig operations working together?
So yeah, I think ultimately, like you said, you have to go from a planned well on paper to something that's executable to operations, and a lot of, you know, for us, what that means is once you've done your detailed well work and you've gone through the well design reviews and the assurance processes and everything's signed off, now you put together this big booklet of a lot of the same information in a lot of cases that goes to the well, but it's kind of trimmed where it's the operations team, where it's trimmed to only relevant information. I think a lot of times a lot of the information, like I said, is the same from the planning side to the well construction side, and it's more bespoke towards the actual process of well construction and the step by step. But a lot of it ends up being reworked. Is you take the stuff that you've planned, and again, the reality is you're going back to snipping tool and creating new custom whatever views for the operations team to look at. And I mean, I think the data is the data. Once you've established, for example, once you've established pore pressure, once you've established your casing schematic, that should be carried through from the planning phase up to the operations phase, and then you can expand on it if you need to. But I think this data is gonna, this capability in the planner module will help feed in the information that's needed to help set up the ops teams for success and give them a fighting chance to have an efficient, well-constructed wellbore in line with the specs that we agreed. And there's plenty of examples of issues with revision histories, with the wrong information being sent to the rig by accident because somebody pulled up an old Excel spreadsheet that wasn't the most accurate. And those are the types of things that can get you into trouble. If you send a wrong schematic and they're going off of that schematic, or a lot of times the rig will complain that they have two sets of information that mismatch, where the data mismatches. Those are the types of things that result in late night phone calls and high levels of stress and potential for mistakes. And I think if we have a streamlined data management workflow, a lot of that can be alleviated. So as you mature things through the planning stage, you then feed it right into the operations well construction stage, and if you're doing things the right way, hopefully you shouldn't have those types of issues. But like I said, the reality of today is we have them, but the prospect for the future is hopefully we can improve upon that.
So I'd like to maybe pose a hypothetical situation where our whole workflow is documented automatically. Everything that we ever do, every decision that we make, every analysis that we do is documented and stored. So where I've done my sensitivities on shoe tops, where I've run sensitivities on low pore pressure, medium pore pressure, and high pore pressure, everything is stored. Now, the importance is that wealth of information. Basically, every stakeholder, and this is going back to the operations, they don't need to know that much information. A general manager doesn't need to know, the finite, minute details and the different permutations that I've planned. The ops team don't really care how much the well costs. They know that they just need to deliver. Give them a time, and they'll deliver to that time. They don't need to know that you've done all these calculations and trade-offs between, should I run 18-inch liner, should I run 16-inch liner, what weight should I run? They don't need to know that. They just need to know, what should I do? In the same way the general manager needs to know what decision does it make. And I think the importance is, in any workflow that we do, that we understand in the various stakeholders and people who touch the data and the workflow in any part, what do they need to know? It's good to have that open. Don't get me wrong. I think being on the rig side, I would have loved to see, right, we're having an issue. What has this been looked at in the past? And you take a look at the workflow and you're like, okay, well, they have looked at this contingency liner, but they said, no, it's too high risk. That would be great, and to see all that analysis so I can assure myself that this is the right approach. But it's important that whenever we talk about workflow and data, there's always going to be an element of output. And the output will always be different to whoever is consuming the data in whatever position they have in the well delivery workflow. And I think, on your point on how do we interface with the rig and the operators, my opinion is good. But it's very manual. I have to take all the analysis that I've done, and I have to expertly craft it in reports and in slides to make sure that it is fit for consumption for the rig. And I think there's a gap there, an opportunity there for us to understand what do they really need, make that really clear, put it out automatically, so we don't have to spend days and days choosing the right language, choosing the right formats, etc., for them to consume the data.
Yes. Very good points. I think we're getting towards the end of this webinar. My brain is full. I need a nap. You have said so many clever things. I'd like to thank both of you, Kareem and Ian, I am and my entire team, we are super proud to be working with experts like you, learning from you, being able to provide solutions, get feedback, and see adoption of the ideas and solutions that we create together. And hearing you talk so forward-thinking, enthusiastic about the big issues of our industry, it really gives me motivation and inspiration to keep on going. We're going somewhere great, and with people like you, it's guaranteed to be a big success. So I'd like to thank you for all the good work you do and for your participation here today. For you who are watching this, please comment, click like, click subscribe on YouTube, and follow the discussion on LinkedIn. Please reach out with ideas, or if you want to be on the expert panel on one of our webinars, reach out to us. We would love to talk with you. And thank you everyone so much. See you next time. Bye bye.